Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to draw a pretty face, or what I consider a pretty face. We'll see how well I can get it. But it's always tricky because pretty faces are, so evenly distributed, not always symmetrical. I don't want to use that word, but the proportions and the alignment and overall, I guess, just, features are very defined in a way where it's easy to recognize when something maybe isn't considered or deemed pretty. I don't know. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's a pretty tough one. But the main thing I want to talk to you about is using like an Andrew Loomis method where you first draw a sphere and then divide the sides into quadrants like that. So you just slice off a portion. You define the center line of that sphere, which becomes the center line of the face. You attach the jaw by just dropping it down. You can divide this into halves and add that area, but this is more of a judgment call. And then if you bring this line over, you got to kind of picture where that occurs on the other side based on some sort of perceived perspective. So you get this kind of mannequin thing going on just like that. You can use ovals for areas like the chin, anything to kind of get an idea for the way this would be without using just straight lines. The neck is generally going to come off the base of the head, cranium like that, and curve back. Probably even a little bit further back like this. So getting just the right, again, proportions are kind of the main thing here. But let's just say something like this just to get it started. So this is just our base mannequin to get the ball rolling, okay? And from here we want to divide up and place the features. Now if you're doing stylized work, there's a lot of range of what this can mean. Generally the ear is going to be on the back quadrant of this divide that we created, and the ear is generally going to give you placement of the brow and bottom of the nose, but you have to kind of curve around this line. So the main plane change would be something like this. So when it comes up, it's going to go back over. But I generally will just kind of draw it with a curve. Same thing for the nose. And remember that this top line is really the brow, not the eyes. So the eyes are going to sit lower. Something else I find helpful to do is actually draw this larger shape like this. So this is kind of like the nasal cavity or something, or nasal area of the face. And the nose is going to be much smaller over to here. But what I'm saying is I find it helpful to get in kind of this bend because it's never completely flat right there. And then it kind of comes back like this. So these are all kind of guidelines, and it looks real eerie and creepy at first. The nose generally on most people is going to tilt up, but not everybody. So there's never a single rule when it comes to faces. It's always kind of a constant adjustment. And then from this last area, from the nose to the chin, you're going to divide this into 3. And that top lip is going to sit right about here. So I just kind of draw that in with an M and then a U for the bottom. Now this was obviously a closed mouth pose. And then more of a stretched out M for the middle of those two. So let's go ahead and scale this up. Let's also take the opportunity to flip this work at this point. You want to constantly do that as you're drawing faces, even from a slight angle like this. So what are the main things, as I start to do this, I'm picturing the eyes are going to sit right about here. You see this looks pretty strange at first, but these are just guidelines. You really have to get used to looking through what you see here. That's probably the toughest part, because when you first start drawing, you think that you got to put every line down exactly where it needs to be, and that's the farthest from the truth. That's not the way it is, at least not in my style anyways. But as we keep adjusting this, we're going to chisel out these features. So the forehead's going to go back a little bit here. It's going to dip inward right there. And we're going to get rid of some of these lines. The eyebrows are going to be up here somewhere. I guess that she almost looks a bit angry, but we'll go with that for now. And then we start to map out other parts of the placement of the features by other features. So for instance, if you find the width of the nose, that's going to generally give you the width of the eyes. And the width of the eyes is generally going to give you one eye. Now, this is going to vary, again, based upon the style in which you're trying to create. If it's a comic book female, then or anime is going to be quite different in proportions and alignment than, some other styles. So you just have to be aware of that. So even though this is pretty crude looking and pretty wild, forgive me, I also should have mentioned that we need to divide the face into thirds. So the thirds rule is basically from the line to the brow, or the hairline to the brow, so that'd be your first 1/3, like that. From the brow to the bottom of the nose, and from the bottom of the nose to the chin. So there's your thirds. Okay, so that's another just quick alignment process to make sure that this is in the range of what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and take this now. Let's copy it. And I'm going to erase this back so that we can see a bit more clearly. Again, we've got to get used to looking through this. Now, the nose, if you notice, I placed that straight down. Okay, that's not the way a nose occurs on most people, right? So we're going to get a curved line. It's going to bring the tip of the nose out this way, and then we're going to work back. But the main thing is that this base information is there for kind of placing the features. So something like this, we'll say. I'm just going to start very light. Okay, I just want to get into some basic lines. If you want to simplify this, draw a circle for the front of the nose and practice attaching the line kind of at the top of the circle and coming back. And just keep in mind the bridge of the nose and the connection to the brow are two different kind of curves. So you got one slight curve and then a more abrupt curve. So just practice that, and also practice the planes of the nose, in which case, like I said, it goes down a little bit and connects to the face. It's not completely straight out, but that's going to vary based on the character you're drawing. So now with the lip, you can see it looks real flat and real awkward. Good way to find that is you got this kind of shape right here that comes off the bottom of the nose. That gives you the peak of the M kind of shape that you get for the lips. And lips are as widespread, or there's so many variables to lips, so you just have to. I look at lips like you just need to draw them individually for practice. You just have to, so that you're constantly testing different shapes and different widths of the lip. Or lips. And there's just so many different types. You can't just say, oh, I figured out how to draw this one style of lips, I'm done. That's just not how it works. There's just so many different type of lips, so you got to practice those a lot. And then from here down, you just get that little, you kind of picture it does this. So it goes back like this. You see I'm a little bit off there. Comes back out like this, comes back down and back around for the chin. So you get this, sign of kind of center line thing going on right there, which I think is helpful to do when you're trying to map out the face. So let's say something like that. Let's place the eyes now. So the eyes are going to be where the nostrils end, kind of. So right about here. On this side, we have to perceive that the nostril is hidden, and that other eye might be somewhere right about there, give or take. We could need to move these around. And again, this is going to vary based upon style. And generally, the width of the eye will bring you down to the bottom of the nose. So you can also kind of map this way and back out this way. So you see it hits right about where I was at. So let's go ahead and draw in the shape of an eye. And again, this varies a lot. Probably the most basic way to draw an eye is just a curve up at the top like that. It dips down a little bit more to the inside like this, so the area closest to the nose. And then another curve coming back, but then it's going to tuck up under that top line. So that's kind of what I see when I draw eyes, something like that. Let's try to emulate that over here now, or recreate that. Now on this side, based upon this angle, one of the things you have to think about is that as the eye gets closer to the side of the face and the face starts to recede away from the viewer based on perspective, it starts to kind of go past the eye, or it looks like you see a little bit of the white of the eye on the side like this. But I actually have to draw this and then kind of gauge it, because sometimes it just doesn't look right. So based upon the character type, based upon the angle, it might not be there as more noticeably, and it might do more like this here. So it might curve down. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that the two shapes are actually different. It sounds silly because you're trying to get the same look of an eye over here, but these curves are going to be more abrupt on this side of the face. So, and this eye is going to be a little bit more squished in on this side of the face. But depending on the angle of the face, you may or may not get some of the cheek and the kind of that profile that you see of the face right here. I'm just going to kind of throw these in. Notice that these are just pretty subtle curves. The cheekbone's going to be a bit more pronounced. And then as I get down to the chin here, I'm going to curve that ever so slightly back this way, but just real subtle curves. And again, I'm just kind of fleshing out the feeling of this character, this look of this character at this point. So this isn't anything that has to be too, I want to fight the urge to think about perfection at this stage. This isn't about perfection. This is about making decisions and getting closer to the end result. Okay, so let's continue to shape the head. Go back here. Again, I'm constantly moving lines around, trying to see a bit more into the work. Let's bring this line back. Nice curve for the jawline. So generally, the big difference that you're going to see from feminine to masculine is more angular features. So masculine is going to be more angular features. Feminine is going to be more soft, subtle curves, things like that. Not always, but it's usually a pretty good rule to live by. Something like that. Bring this line down. Nice thin neck for the females. And just like that, we'll say that this is kind of stage 2 of the female face. So let's go ahead and move these around a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that first preliminary sketch. I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to continue to refine this. I'm also going to flip this now, because again, you want to keep flipping things to spot any flaws in your work as you go. So the eyes are a bit weird. They're even, one's a little bit higher, I think. I think the one on the right's a bit higher. So I'm just going to grab this and move it up and over just a tad, just like that. And what I want to do is kind of pick this apart and go, okay, what can I do to correct this, or what would make this look more impressive? Now, let's get the eyelid in place. So I'm just going to kind of retrace the top. The main thing I see with the eyelids is that they're basically a similar shape, but you've got a picture where the brow kind of sits down on top of them. It's more noticeable on males, but it's just basically like the brow is weighted against the eyelid. So something like that. Keep in mind that you really want to perceive this roundedness of the eye. The eyeball is spherical behind this, so you want to get that in the way that you shade and render this out. The other thing is with the female character, you can generally just do a nice heavy eyelash up top, especially if it's comic style. And you can really bring these eyes out with that. And that one's a bit weird. Let me redo that. Let's see how just by adding that shape, you can really make those eyes more pronounced. Same thing with the bottom, but I tend to keep it heavier to the back like this, and then really light to the where it starts to connect to the tear duct. So let's go ahead and erase back the line here. Some of these construction lines, we start to get these out of the way. So it's starting to come together, starting to look a bit more like a pretty face. The ear is a bit awkward, so we can bring this over more. The jaw is a bit massive. You're going to keep fine-tuning this. You just got to keep adjusting it. Like I said, drawing some idea of beauty is pretty tough to capture. I think it's one of the trickier things. Some people have a natural eye for it. Others battle it constantly, like myself. But yeah, it's just one of those things you just have to keep working at. And the ear placement looks a bit strange. I think it kind of started a bit too high, but let me, I didn't want to do that. Actually just want to widen it out just a little bit and bring it down just a little. even though I might cover this up with a hair design anyways. So for the hairline, just kind of draw in a basic shape for the hairline, like this, just to get an idea for where all that wonderful hair is going to go. Scale this down just a little bit for room for that. And with hair, it's just, just draw in kind of like ribbon shapes, flowing lines. So yeah, probably will cover up the ear like this. So a couple ways to look at hair. One is, like I said, flowing ribbons, flowing lines, overlapping shapes is really big, because if you draw them all side by side, it's gonna really flatten it out. So you want to draw overlapping shape, highs and lows, and then probably the perimeter shape is the next thing I think a lot about. Like just, maybe like the back of the head, it's obviously a lot taller from the hair than the skull would be, and then have it break off and flow basically more from this preliminary shape. So that makes sense, something like that. And I tend to not overdraw the part of the hair, try to fight the urge, because it's almost like interlocking fingers. It's not so much a very noticeable part. So, and instead of drawing it straight back like that, try to put it back like, this kind of squiggly line and then over. Seems to look a bit more natural. So we'll just say something like that for now. And let's have the character looking forward, or off to the side, I guess. And just remember that the iris is about 1/3 of the eye across. And the pupil shouldn't touch the top eyelid unless you're trying to make someone look angry or tired or unenthused. You could do a lot of things with the expression based upon the placement of the pupil. Or you can make them look extremely crazy because you put the pupil in the wrong spot, like I just did there. Okay, drop shadow on the iris. And highlight. So that's kind of like my process for doing eyes. I'm not done obviously, but that's kind of like the workup that I do right there. And so now what I need to do is refine this and make it look more impressive. So it's all kind of there. I know it looks awkward, but as I start to refine this, it'll start to make more sense. And I'm just going to kind of pick and choose now what I want to bring out about this illustration, where I want the light source to be predominant, things like the glare on the hair. I usually do a glare on the top, some on the sides. This is more of a comic style, which is what I typically do. So now what I'll do is refine this. So I've got this kind of base sketch going, and I want to bring this out and make it look a bit more stylized and a bit more impressive. But I've got my foundation there to work from to do this. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's soft erase this back. Okay, now I'll just zoom up here a bit. Actually, I want to erase this back even more. You can either just draw over top with a new layer or keep soft erasing. One of the things I like about soft erasing though is it feels like I'm drawing on paper. Like this is how I would really do this on paper. So I try to make the digital tools react as much like traditional tools as I can. So now as I get in here, even though I'm zooming up, which I really can't zoom up in real life, right? Wish I had that ability. But yeah, so now as I draw this out, I'm going to start making some style choices and try to make this look a bit more like the way that I would draw my comic book women. Just want to capture some of these shapes and just kind of make any final choices. Right here you can round over the the eye with the eyelashes, because again, you're probably not going to see the very point of the eye. That's a good way to kind of flatten it out when you're doing this. So just round that over right there. Make sure to make these eyelashes pretty predominant, pretty significant on the top like that. Make sure to shade, on this inside tear duct area. Give it that little bit of drop shadow. I think I need to push this line back a little bit. And with the female characters, generally less is more. So you can do a lot of hinting. So you can like hint to the nose. You don't have to trace every line of the nose. You'll see a lot of people do like little lines like that. A lot of hinting to the shapes and then letting the color kind of, fill in those gaps is a good idea versus tracing every single line and putting a shadow on everything. You don't want to overly shade the female faces. They just tend to look a bit odd if you do that. Like that. Make sure that when drawing the iris right here that it doesn't touch the, I guess it could touch the bottom, but it's generally going to be a little bit more of a squint. But make sure to not to draw it as a circle. It's got to be an oval or ellipse from this angle. That little bit of a highlight in there, something like that. Draw on the eyebrow, make it thicker, and then have it thin out as it goes towards the side. Something like that. And now for this side, I want to try to pinpoint, the same shapes, but obviously more elongated, so more stretched out on this side. Again, I'll kind of trace out the basic perimeter of the eye first. And remember that with the eyelashes, you really can kind of group them all together and then just do a few stylized points off there. Now, again, this is more of a comic style technique because real eyelashes obviously don't do this, but not to this degree anyways. But I think it's a fun kind of neat way to do it for comics. Lots of style choices you can make right here to make this your own, make it more noticeable when you're the one doing the illustration basically. Someone can look at it and go, oh, that's so-and-so's way of drawing eyelashes. So the top eyelid right there, you can even draw the line that comes off the brow if you want. Depends on how much detail you want in there. Again, detail is kind of a strange thing as it pertains to women's eyes, female features. You want to make sure you don't over detail, especially as in areas of the skin, because you can actually make the character look more wrinkled. Lines have that appearance on skin, so keeping in suit with what I did on the other eye, it actually did connect to the bottom eyelid. So that's got to be the same because that'll stick out if it's not. I'm trying to get a little bit more of an oval or ellipse here, but it's feeling like I have to extend this out because I'm also looking at the white of the eye. In fact, that's the part to me that stands out the most. Like if you leave too much of the white of the eye, it looks very strange. So I'll actually bring that eyelash in to shorten the amount of the white of the eye. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And now the pupil shouldn't be in the very middle. It should be offset a little bit. So this is another tough one to get just right because if you place the pupil in the wrong spot, they tend to look crazy. Like some of my ex-girlfriends. All of my ex-girlfriends, that's why they're exes. Okay, enough about my personal life. Okay, so then as we draw this back, again, thick to thin. You can incorporate a lot of style choice here as well. Something like that. And let's get this chin in. And here's another area where, you know, it's just easy to overdo this area and make the character look more masculine. So it's very much kind of a floating line, I think. You got to like move this around and, you know, look at it from a distance and say, okay, does that look, you know, it almost looks like too much, you know. So the placement of the features can have a big impact. So that's where this diagram helps you get started. But as you start to render, you really have to kind of get used to maneuvering this a little bit. I think this chin line can go up a little bit personally. So let's try that. So yeah, the chin placement and proportion of the rest of the face is pretty directly, you know, reflectant, I don't know if that's a word, pretty directly related to getting a nice feminine quality. Remember, for nice clean lines, try to shoot them out in one pass. Okay, so now for the hair, we want to bring that up. So you notice I started pretty flat with that line I have, so I want to bring that up and over. And then, you know, think of like, you know, water, flowing ribbons, anything with a bit of a flow to it. I'll try to get that feeling in the hair, and it'll generally look a lot more, you know, have some elements of beauty to it. So let's bring that up and around. Bring this line over and back. So again, I'm trying not to draw the part as much as I'm trying to draw the overlap, or, you know, what I always think about is fingers interlocking for the overlaps of the hair. So again, bring this line up, over, have it flow back. You know, we could have the ear popping out, but I'm just going to make it easier on myself and cover that up. Little flips of the hair so it's not so boring. Remember too, if you want to detail it as you render it, you can do this occasional kind of wispy, loose strand here and there. It's always makes it look a bit more realistic, or gives it a bit more style, I guess. And so now the glare, I usually will take the glare, and the glare, me personally, I do it where the glare kind of bends up on each shape. So see these little kind of hills that I'm doing right there, those little bends up, that's on each separate shape in my mind. So it's not necessarily the way you have to do it, it's just the way I tend to think it looks best when it's rendered, but that's just my style choice. So if you notice, here's a line, so in the middle of that next shape, that bend's going up. Hopefully you can see that. That's kind of the pattern I follow. Not every time, like right here I can do a mix. It'll either be like a bend up or kind of this yin and yang shape. But the main thing is that you're picturing that this shape as a light source, as a highlight right there, looks good to you. If that looks good, then that's probably really all you need to worry about. And then the other thing I'll do is, like right here, I'm going to have the light source be more evident on this portion of the hair because it's out towards the outermost area. And then as I work back, it'll kind of dissipate. The light source will get thinner and kind of separate here and there and just catch a few areas of the hair as it goes back. So that's kind of how I would shade darker hair, which is what I'm going for in this character. Now again, if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't draw comics, why is this person saying this to me? I don't like him. You know, you're just going to forego this part and you're going to do more of the rendering into each shape here. So it's really the same thing, but as a comic artist, I kind of stop all that additional work because I'm lazy. No, because you know, you got to get stuff done in a time frame, certain time frame. So you take little shortcuts, and this is one of them for comic illustration. You just kind of simplify and make this work this way. So, little things, the eye is a bit off. I mean, faces don't have to be entirely symmetrical, but this eye is a little bit small. Um, the nose feels a tiny bit big, but again, that's, subject to the person. There's lots of different noses out there. So you just have to decide whether or not this is the right kind of look for you. I'll generally put glares on the bottom lip like that, and I'll shade the top lip in a bit more when I color it. So, I mean, I could make tiny little adjustments like taking the nose and, maybe making it just a tad smaller or something, nudging it around, kind of checking the work, um, little things like that. And then past that, I would just shade in the hair. I'll get rid of some of the rough sketch lines here. And then for shading in the hair, I'll generally shade it in where I do each section kind of. So I'm going to do this more of a solid fill effect. Forgive me, I can't talk today. So I'm just going to kind of grab each section of the hair like this. I'll leave like tiny little gaps, and you can really just come back and draw those in with white. It's obviously pretty easy to do with digital art, but what I'll do is just kind of fill in these areas real quick, and this starts to make the light source stand out more. And lots of ways you can stylize even just this effect here. So just have to practice and play around with it. But notice those little separation lines kind of give it a little bit more volume, so it doesn't appear like it's just this big helmet of hair. That's the only bad thing about this particular way of shading hair. It can really appear like this, like plastic cap, like costume or something. So what you do to break that up are those little lines that flip in and out, and then the overlapping shapes. So as to where each one of these are kind of going in the same direction, then we'll grab that next piece, which is right about here, and we can have this go in front of those other shapes and just kind of break it up a little bit. So something like that. Get in these little drop shadows, the hair coming back here and connecting to the scalp, something like that. And I should probably time lapse this part, but you guys keep telling me you like real-time videos, so guess what? It's all in real time, baby. Alright, so now, and I really could simplify this. Like, honestly, I could probably just take this with a larger brush and just get the very edges. I could even draw the selection tool, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea at this point. But I'll show you another way you can get these little breaks, see if it looks any better. So we'll fill all this in, like so. I just hear people like, oh my god, this is so boring. Go faster. I can't. This is as fast as I can do this. Okay, so let's get this bottom shape of hair too. I think that's the other thing. It can't just stop abruptly. It's got to have some other little shapes in here, especially at the bottom. Like, it's got to break off in a way that looks like hair. So just, a couple little strands flipping up and over. And then for this part, you're going to have a little bit of separation here and there, like that. Not much. And then you can take translucent or white and then get some of these other little lines. And like I said, don't hesitate to go across the shape. You've done enough with these larger bulks of hair. Now you can go across, and then when you render them for highlights and comic shading, I just kind of do this. This is kind of why I bring these one areas I was talking about up, and then I just add a little bit of rendering like this. So, you know, this is up to you and the style you like. This is just the way I like to do it. And you can actually bring this back both ways. So you could go like this in a few areas. You know, fix some of these funky little shapes there. And then come back with the whiteout, and you could go back this way as well if you wanted. So lots of different ways to kind of mix this up and give it some style. Okay, let's get the other side and see if we can finish this off and make it look good. So the other thing with the part is I'll fill a lot of this in. Again, me personally, I know we all do this different, but I'll fill a lot of that in and just leave a few little areas with some light gaps in there, not much. Because I feel like if you draw this shape right up the middle, it just really looks fake. Again, it already looks fake because of the way we're using this comic style to render this, but if you do this like really noticeable shape where the part is, I just feel like it totally kills it. So don't do that. Just don't do it. So yes, we can get this shape in there. We can also think about a little bit of edging of light on this side as well. So if this is where the light source is coming from, we can leave a little bit of edge light on the very perimeter, and that gives us an opportunity to do like a nice heavy weighted line on this side as well. So that's just, again, more of a style choice, but something you can do. But if it looks like too much of a distraction, just get it out of there. And I want to make sure, I like these kind of flowing lines right here, so I want to make sure to leave a little bit of that in there as I render this out, because this is the other thing. You got to make sure when you shade this stuff and render it, you don't cover up anything that kind of looks cool or that adds to it. You know, you want to keep the parts of the illustration that are working and only cover up the bad stuff, stuff that isn't working. It's like I want to use a few more thin lines right here by the eyelashes because I want you to see your eyelashes. So I'll just kind of leave a little bit more light gap in there just so they kind of, you can still read the shape. Again, this is going to be in shadow mainly, something like that. And that neck may be too far back, I'm not sure, but one of the things you can do is when you do draw this type of stuff, just check it against realism. Look at some realism, even during, but even after. Just don't be afraid to draw something and then look at a picture afterwards, and then make your next best judgment call, or basically learn from it then, and then next time you revisit the subject, remember that that thing. I'm sure obviously people are thinking, well, wouldn't you just look at reference while you're doing it? Yeah, you can do that as well, but I think that you have to sometimes just draw without it, just so you get your style down, but then check your work and go, okay, I was way off there, and then you learn from that. So you can do it in any form, fashion you choose, but I do like drawing without reference at times just because I feel like I get a bit more of a creative vibe. I'm like making style choices, not realism choices. It's real easy to just look at a picture of an actress or somebody and say, well, I got to draw that because she, there's a perfect picture of beauty or something. But then you're going to kind of hinder yourself in the way that you create your art. So it's a weird kind of thing, but they both go hand in hand. It's not a one or the other type thing. I think you need both. You need to study from life, and you need to draw from imagination. So you can make all these weird mistakes in your work and go, wow, that's I guess I'm weird because that's how I drew it. Okay, so something like that. And then again, we can get in here with the render a little bit. Actually, let me scale down the brush. But yeah, this is just how I would do it. Now keep in mind, probably should have started the video by saying this, but I'm going to say it at the end for anybody that finally stuck around to the end. You know, this isn't my strong suit. Like, I've always struggled to draw women, pretty women. It's always been tough for me. It's like always been easier for me to draw like monsters and villains and things like that. So what I want you to know about that is, you know, I didn't want to say in the beginning, people are like, well, I don't want to watch this video when you don't even think you can draw a pretty woman. The main thing is that I don't give up because I know it's one of my Achilles heels in my art. I just try harder. So, um, you know, just make sure that you don't skip out on doing it or you try to like draw less of them. You got to have, you know, a nice range in your artwork, as I'll say over and over on the channel here. So make sure that you practice it more if it's your weak, you know, your weaker attribute in your, you know, the way that you draw. Don't shy away from it and don't just kind of, you know, I'll just get to that later. I'll get better over time. No, you get better over time if you're actually addressing the issue, and that means drawing it over and over again and finding out where you can make improvements. So it is what it is. I just want you to know that this is one of the areas in my work where I feel like I need to practice more and more. And so for that reason I do. And hopefully over time, you know, people just look at the work and go, wow, Rob draws really cool looking women for his comics. But it, just so you know, it wasn't easy and it didn't come overnight. Like, I've drawn countless thousands and thousands of ugly, ugly women just to try to get a little bit better at it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'd love to know what you think in the comments section below, as well as what you would like to see in the future. And as always, thanks for the support of the channel. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.